All right, question from Dolce Sol Sosa. Peter, between Mark D'Onofrio, Pat Nix, Lance Guidry, Dan Enos, who do you think could eat more McNuggets in 30 minutes?
D'Onofrio, no doubt.
Yeah, that was easy. That was a layup. That was a layup right there. So, speaking of D'Onofrio, man, let's get into this article. So, CanesInSight.com, if you guys don't know, 7.5 million posts and counting. It's been around since 2011. So, really, the whole golden era. And then since then has been the CanesInSight era as we become the biggest Canes website on the planet with, just tens of millions of views a year, tons of posts, incredible engagement. And we follow recruiting the whole way. So all these guys that we're talking about, you just pull up old threads and find us talking about it. And Pete was already part of the board at this point, which is awesome. So I'm doing an article. I'm going back and looking at the old recruiting classes. And the class of 2013, this was one that on signing day, it felt like the worst class ever. Pete, you remember, Matt Thomas goes to FSU. Denver Kirkland goes to Arkansas. Alice Collins goes to Arkansas. It just felt like a total nightmare at the time. When you go back and look at it, scroll up a little bit so I can pull these stats. You're talking about over 50% of the players were in the NFL. 9 out of 17 made the NFL. That's insane numbers. Only 2% of college football players make it. Only 22% of 4-stars. So just an insane amount of NFL talent in a class. Now, these were not like, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase kind of players. But these were guys that made the league, and a lot of them lasted a while. So there was a good, talented class, even though on signing day it felt terrible. And, of course, the classic moment, Pete, was when Stacy Coley put the swag hat on.
Yeah, that one's gonna be etched in history forever. I remember that was also one kind of like the Tracy Howard recruitment where it seemed like Miami wasn't getting him the entire time. From my recollection of it.
Yep, no, that was a surprise. It felt like FSU for a while as we go through the list. By the way, Pac, appreciate you. You want to advertise with CanesInsight, just email CanesInsight@gmail.com and we'll talk. So anyone who wants to advertise, appreciate you, Pac Mahomes. Just email CanesInsight@gmail.com. We'll talk about all these options. Obviously, the views have been crazy lately with everything going on. So, so the best player in the class, Al-Quadi Muhammad, the evaluation on the player was right. Unfortunately, didn't get the most out of them because he got suspended for that BS deal with the agent. I forgot even what the story was there. Would have loved to see this guy with Manny Diaz. I think he probably would have been a top 100 player. But this is a guy who started games last year in the year 2024. He was starting a lot of games, 93 NFL games played, 6th-round pick, would have been higher if not for the suspension. Got him out of New York City, suburbs in New Jersey up there in North Jersey. Shout out to your boy, Jersey Dan. He explained the differences of the New Jersey regions to me yesterday. But this is from North Jersey. Even though it's New York City suburb, they claim Jersey. We got a lot of guys from that area in this class. Al-Quadi Muhammad being the most highly rated one. And you hated that he missed his chance to really blow up under Manny Diaz in a perfect scheme for him when he got suspended.
Yeah, he was living good at Miami, as we remember. That was probably my favorite part of his career, his Instagram posts, living a lavish lifestyle. But it's crazy. It's crazy that he's still around. You got to give him all the credit in the world. Just shows you the sort of talent he is. And unfortunately, he's kind of in that long list of players who had some good flashes at Miami, but never came to full fruition until the NFL.
Yep. Again, that suspension, I think, killed him because first he dealt with D'Onofrio, then he dealt with like being a bad scheme, and then right when Manny came, who's out. Jermaine Grace, who we'll get to in a second, another NFL player, went through a similar situation, suspended for the same deal. Stacy Coley, a guy with a lot of talent, very quick, really had a sensational freshman year, made some big plays that excited you with what he did. I remember the Virginia Tech game in the smoke jerseys. He took that screen to the house, and you thought this guy was going to be one of the greats. I think durability, just frame, hurt him, and that's why he didn't last very long in the NFL. But a productive player at Miami, you definitely wouldn't call him a bust. Disappointment, maybe you want him to be a first round kind of receiver, but he was very productive for the Canes. He had some great games against Florida State.
Yeah, I think he just ultimately wasn't able to keep the weight on or put weight on.
Jay Fresh saying, "Good meeting you at the scrimmage." Yeah, man, great meeting you, Jay Fresh. Wait a minute, what scrimmage? I don't know. I don't know what you mean by a scrimmage. But yeah, man, it was awesome meeting you out there. A great day at Green Tree. So
I'm gonna. I think I'm gonna have to get a bark attack, D. So I'm gonna mute myself for a second.
Yeah, deal with Honey. as she barks here. But Kevin Olson, also from the New York City suburbs there in New Jersey, this was the most disappointing player in the class. So quarterback, highly rated. At one point, I think he was like the number 2 quarterback or something in the country. He slipped in the ratings a little bit, but a highly rated player who has a lot of ability. Or let me say it differently. Highly rated player that you thought had a lot of ability, but then you see him and you're like, all right, well, his brother is Greg Olson, who was a freak of nature, tall, ran a 4.45 or something in the combine, super athletic. Olson wasn't big like that. He wasn't fast like that. And then arm-wise, really was an average arm for a guy that was so highly rated. So the tools, when you go back and look at it in retrospect, I think were not as good as advertised. But the bigger issue is I remember the Under Armour game, and I posted about this when it happened. So this is not only just retrospect, although I did think he was going to be a lot better than he was. Under Armour game, he had a really bad game. And then after the game, he was like pouting and coaches were trying to talk to him. He was kind of like brushing him off and just throwing a temper tantrum. And I remember seeing that and saying, that's not good. That's not good quarterback behavior. Turns out he goes to Miami kind of in trouble from the beginning, gets in a car crash and leaves the scene early in his career. I think before he even enrolled, had multiple suspensions, bounces around, gets a rape charge, which went to trial, was found not guilty. Now he works with his brother. Seems like he's cleaned his life up a little bit, but extremely disappointing quarterback. And this was a pattern with Miami quarterbacks going from basically Brock, like after Brock, all the way to Derek King. If you just bookend those 2 guys, 2 transfer quarterbacks, by the way, Berlin and King, if you wonder why I like portal guys so much. But everybody in between, you had either guys that were suspended, guys that were legit criminals or had committed crimes, and then guys that were good kids and clean-ish, but partied too much, maybe didn't, we weren't like what Derek King was, which was a coach on the field. So I think Olson was unfortunately one of those guys. Some of the more serious charges were against him, and he didn't have the intangibles to be the quarterback he needed for the Miami Hurricanes. You're on mute there, Pete.
Sorry, there we go. Yeah, no, that one from the start, man, it just wasn't didn't have many positive signs there. But like you said, glad to see he's, looks like he's cleaned up his situation.
A few NFL players here. Artie Burns, I think, was the best player in the class. First-round pick, the only first-round pick. Elite hurdler, broke the national indoor record for the 60-meter hurdles as a high school junior. Long, athletic, was committed to Alabama. We actually flipped him to Miami, which usually was the other way around in this era for these highly rated players from Miami Northwestern. Still in the NFL, tore his ACL. I think that might be it for him, unfortunately. Hopefully not, but he's dealt with some injuries. But first-round pick, led the ACC in interceptions as a junior with 6, and really was, to me, the best player in this class. When you look at production, talent, NFL ability, all that, Artie Burns, that was a major hit, a major win from Alabama. If you won more of those instead of those guys going to Alabama, I think you'd have a much better football team. Bo Sandland, I remember Mario kind of helped get this one across the finish line, if I recall, when he was briefly the tight end coach for the Canes. Los Angeles, California, JUCO player, a receiver in high school, had a growth spurt, never really played at Miami or had success, but then goes to like Montana State, I want to say, and develops into a 7th-round player. Doesn't make the league, but somebody that did have talent, just kind of couldn't keep up with the guys we had. Eventually, we had Clive Walford, we bring in Njoku, just different level players, but he wasn't an NFL guy. Probably on the disappointing side, even though he did get drafted. Corn Elder, Pete, I know you remember watching this guy as a senior in high school.
This was a post signing day deal too. This was like in April.
Yeah, rare post signing day deal. Basketball player, scholar, Division I caliber basketball player. Was also a running back. I think it was like the leading running back in Tennessee. Just a tremendously athletic player. And then moved to corner, and it was a good corner for us. And ended up getting drafted 5th round, playing in the NFL. He was a little slight, and he had some injuries. But as far as like being a great football player and a great cane, Corn Elder, thankfully, he was able to have the 1 year in Manny's defense where I think he really shined and played great for us in 2016.
Yeah, he was a fun one. I was holding out hope at the time he was coming to play basketball too, but that was also when Coach L was getting things rolling, so they didn't need his help out there.
Next guy, someone you know well, Pete, great dude, Stan Dobard from New Orleans, highly rated tight end, 4-star player, big guy. I thought he moved to defensive end later in his career and
should have done it earlier. As he tells me himself. I'll get more into that here, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's really the story with Dobard is that he was a defensive end that was playing tight end, but if he was played earlier, I think you could be talking about an NFL player.
Yeah, he enjoyed the physical aspect of it. And by the way, a guy that had opportunities to transfer. He kind of had bad luck there with David Njoku and Chris Herndon coming in the same room as him. But from what I understand, D, and again, talking to him, like he made that move to D-line his last year, and it was kind of just too late to really get on the field. But if he did that earlier, I think would have been maybe a different story, because I think his body type really for D end was better fit. But hey, again, shout out to my boy Stan. I work with Stan at FRM. He represents David Njoku. He represents Edrin Cooper, one of the top rookie linebackers in the league from last year. So he's doing great now as an agent, man. So shout out to Stan.
Yeah, shout out to Stan. Jamal Carter, similar story to a lot of these guys, kind of up and down career with the Offro's defense. Then once the 1 year he had with Coach Banda, has a really good year at safety, ends up going to the NFL for the Atlanta Falcons, 29 NFL games. So he was able to make it to the league. Big dude, very talented from the southern part of Miami-Dade County. Jermaine Grace, same thing with we talked about. I think he was also on the Falcons, Jermaine Grace, and similar deal that we talked about with Muhammad. Really talented player who didn't get to play with Manny as a senior. I think that hurt him. Athletic, kind of that borderline safety linebacker who can really run, from Miramar, Florida, and a good tackler, just a really good player that you just didn't get enough out of him under Coach D'Onofrio, which is unfortunately a recurring theme for a lot of these Golden guys.
Yeah, without a doubt. I was a big fan of Jamal Carter's. I think that with him, like you said, the fit scheme wise, just it didn't. I don't even know if it was the scheme. That definitely was part of it, but the role he was playing and was not suited. I think in today's era, they'd be able to find a role for him. Let's say that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Bobby Pruitt, I think, is very similar to what he brings to the table now.
Yeah.
Looking at the 3 stars, not a lot of hits here. So before we get to the 2 guys that hit, Alex Gall actually had a pretty good senior year from Cincinnati, Ohio. Moeller, same school as Carpenter, Zach Carpenter, our center last year. Not that athletic, but a guy that was able to at least contribute a little bit. Sonny Odogwu, originally from Nigeria, played in Baltimore. You had high hopes for him, just never clicked for him. He was
injuries.
A cup of coffee as a WWE wrestler, but he should have stuck with that. I don't know why he didn't, but didn't work out there. Hunter Knighton, he famously had that collapse during practice, like a heat stroke, and sued the school. Luckily, he was healthy. I don't know how that lawsuit settled. I'm sure they paid something. Ray Lewis 3. There's tragedy in this class, man. You had Alice Collins passed away. Keith Bryant, who we talked about, passed away. The defensive tackle who was committed at one point, and Ray Lewis passing away, the son, which is a shame, from Orlando. Alex Figueroa got in trouble. He got kicked out from DC, and then Walter Tucker, fullback, track guy, didn't really do much. But as you look at this class, just kind of like the
Walter Tucker could run, man.
Oh yeah, he was fast. He looked the part. I understood the offer. But yeah, if you look at the class,
ran track at Miami too.
Yeah, being a big guy. So, but you look at the class, 53% in the NFL. That was one thing that jumps out. A lot of Africans, right? So Dogu was born in Nigeria. Kamalu grew up in Nigeria. And then people don't know this. Gus Edwards was actually born in Liberia. So that was pretty interesting. So you had that flavor. You signed a lot of guys in this class that kind of were just there for the rating, like the Derek Griffin, remember him, the receiver from Texas that everybody was all excited about, the basketball player, Devontae Bond, Raheem Loxley. None of those guys made it on campus. But a lot of the guys we missed on in this class ended up kind of sucking. I mean, Matthew Thomas, who we were all excited about from Booker T, I thought he was going to be a superstar. He went to FSU, never did anything. Keith Bryant, we mentioned. Trevante Valentine, I mean, this was when you were really deep into it, Pete, and really writing a lot for the CanesInSight. Trevante Valentine looked like an NFL player in high school, and he didn't get it done. So
there was a lot of red flags around all these kids, though. Like looking back, I'm not saying they're all like bad kids or anything, but I just the way that some of these guys they missed on handled the recruitments, knowing what I know now about how guys handle recruitments a professional sort of way. I think there was a lot of indecision and a lot of people in a lot of their heads kind of taking them different directions, if that makes sense.
100%. So that character did play a part in a lot of this stuff. By the way, shout out to CBD from Naxos, Greece. some other guys in this class, Jalen Ramsey, he had that whole viral quote where he said he grew up a Canes fan and we didn't offer fast enough, so he went to FSU. That obviously hurt. He was a 5-star player from Nashville, elite, one of the best players of his generation. Joey Bosa from St. Thomas Aquinas. Obviously, his brother would end up following his footsteps to Ohio State. I just don't think we were good enough as a program to get a guy like that at this point. Sky Moore, you remember him from university, and Deadrin Sinnat. So linebacker Moore, defensive tackle Sinnat. Two guys from Florida who I remember at CanesInSight at the time, not in retrospect, we're like, hey, offer these guys. These guys can play. We didn't offer either of them. Sky Moore goes to be all SEC at South Carolina. Sinnat goes to USF, but becomes the 3rd-round pick. These were guys that we wanted.
It was always with Sky Moore, it was always he wasn't big enough, right? And then same thing with Sinnat. It was like he was stumpy and he was short, but man, he was powerful. He went to USF, right?
Yep, and then 3rd round. Eddie Jackson was one that we didn't even talk about all during the process from Boyd Anderson. I don't know if he had grades or what his deal was, but he kind of came on the scene out of nowhere as a senior in high school, at least from the national perspective. And he goes to Alabama. I don't know how Miami was not first on him, but Alabama beat us to the punch. The guy ends up being a 2-time Pro Bowler for Chicago and a great player for Alabama. So that was a huge miss out of your backyard. I think he was friends with Stacy Coley growing up in Broward. And then Clemson kind of chipped into Florida a little bit here with Jaron Kearse, who was a former Miami commit from Fort Myers, ended up going to Clemson, playing many years in the NFL with the Cowboys, some other teams, and Mackenzie Alexander from Immokalee, same thing, goes to Clemson and plays a bunch of years in the pros. Going back to the two guys I kind of glossed over, Gus Edwards and Kamalu, we didn't get a lot out of them here in Miami, but they played in the pros, just big athletic guys, man. A lot of these 3-stars that we talk about, it's like a trend. It's no rocket science. When we go back and look at the 3-stars that made it out of these classes, a lot of them, they looked the best coming off the bus. They had the best size, they had the best athleticism, and whether or not it happened right away at Miami or even at all at Miami, eventually kind of the talent, as long as they had the right mindset and toughness, the talent kind of rose to the top. And those were two with Kamalu and Gus Edwards that if you didn't know anything about football and you just saw those guys, you'd be like, hey, they look like it's supposed to look. And ultimately they go to the NFL.
Yeah, this is class is bringing back memories though, man. I was in the cut during this era, that's for sure.
Yeah, man. So by the way, almost 1,200 on like and subscribe to the show. Go on to CanesInSight.com. We're putting out all these articles going all the way up to the last Manny class as we pick up now with Cristobal. So it's going to be fun to I have a bunch of charts I'll show at the end to kind of show trends and maybe some things that were surprised me when you go back and look at these classes. But Golden in general, he really added some NFL players and some talent to this roster. It's a shame he couldn't get more out of it. So we'll keep going down memory lane.
We're getting questions about Ivan McCartney. I believe he was a couple years before this class.
Yeah, I think he was
was like 2011. I think he was with Geno Smith.
No, that was Stedman Bailey.
Oh, Stedman Bailey was, yes.
But he was he was, let's see. That's a good question.
Maybe he was 2013.
Sticks McCarthy.
Remember this? McCartney.
Sticks McCartney.
Sticks, of course. Yeah,
he was 2010. So he was he was a few years
way before that. Yeah, he was older. I think he was Ocho Cinco's cousin, if I remember correctly.
I remember following this class. KVD says, I thought Derek Griffin was going to save us and be the next big thing. Yeah, man, he looked like
there's still listen. There's I heard yesterday, D. There's still a chance he shows up on campus maybe in January. So
he'll be playing. He'll be playing basketball and football. That'll be the hope. But anyways, man, hey, appreciate everybody tuning in. Like I said, like and subscribe to the show. Day off today, so we're just kind of going through some of this stuff, and then tomorrow back to the double grind. Pete followed by me, breaking down practice and what we're seeing. So it'll be a lot of fun. We'll be rocking and rolling. Thank you all for joining us. Like and subscribe. Go Canes.
Go Canes.